Hello. In this video, we'll see how to use the Good Funds for Me tab of FundSage. So you start out with the landing page. On this tab, Good Funds for Me, you can see uh, two sections, purpose and options. So in terms of purpose, instead of taking the conventional view that your risk appetite is low, moderate, high, we started with the typical purposes people use debt mutual funds for, which is either to park funds for the short term or allocate to debt within the strategic asset allocation, or take specific exposure to credit risk for a yield kicker, or to have a play on interest rate movements. So this is very highly specific to debt investing. So let's say in parking of funds for the short term, the subsequent options are 10 days, 10 months, 10 weeks. The 10 is just a placeholder. It's more like, is it in days, weeks, or months that you want to park funds? Let's see if it's only in days. If it's only in days, then essentially you have just the safest of funds. You see the risk levels 555, which means the least possible risk. All these are green. Credit risk, interest rate risk, and liquidity risk are all close to nothing. And we have a moderate allocation to each of them. The return to risk ratio is also high. And understandably, the YTMs are low. Now, if your horizon is a bit longer, say 10 weeks, as in it's in weeks, then you can get a bit more adventurous. Your risk is still pretty low. You want to still stay close to 4 5, uh, but then since you're taking some risk, you diversify a bit more. And then you have slightly higher YTMs and decentish return to risk ratios. Go down to 10 months, which is a bit longer. You have another set of funds which show certain higher YTMs as expected. But throughout this, it's still about parking funds for short term, so the risk levels are quite low. If you move to the next purpose, which is strategic allocation to debt as an asset class, here we aren't expecting this to be a case of holding money while you wait for some outcome. Here, there obviously the obvious option is you can still be very risk averse, in which case very low credit risk and very low interest rate risk, or you can have low values for these, or you can say, okay, I can take some risk, not a whole lot, or I can take a little bit more risk, and accordingly the selections change. You may specifically want to see exposure to credit risk. There are not too many options here. It's basically the explicit seeking of credit risk to get a certain return. And you can have a play on interest rate movements. There are two options here. One is you already know that you want to invest in long-term debt because you expect the interest rates to fall, in which case it's simple gilt funds, or you want to choose a sensible manager to do it for you. So that's in a nutshell the full spectrum of portfolios. We keep updating these. These are best portfolios as per our current thinking, and given a change in risk scores, the portfolios will also change. An interesting and important function here is the export to my portfolio page. So you can actually pick this selection here. You can't modify it here, but you can export it to my portfolio. Let's name it something, say temp 1. And now you go back to your my fund portfolio section, which is explained in a separate video. You have temp 1 here, which is essentially your original allocation. So now you can change a few things here and even analyze this portfolio and see how it stacks up in terms of its YTM, risk return, concentrations, and so on. And as I said earlier, you can modify it. So that's the idea. You can start with a recommended collection and then modify things as you deem fit. So that in a nutshell is how to use good funds for me. Thanks for watching.